What did you say this is?
What a day.
What a day.
What a day. What a day. What a day.
What a day. With Joe Lowry.
Hey everybody, Joe Lowry, what a day, and my guest at this time needs no introduction, although he's going to get one. He is a WWE Hall of Famer and a two-time Intercontinental Champion. Please welcome to the show, Don the Magnificent Muraco.
Joe, what a day. I've been practicing that all morning.
There you go. There you go. Welcome to the show. You know, I had you back on over the summertime here. We had a good little podcast there, got a lot of feedback online on it. It was really good. So I'm kind of like touching base with my past guests and so forth. One of the things that I've been thinking about asking you is going back to when I first became a fan. I'm going to quickly show you something here. This is from the Boston Garden, July of 1981. This is a program, my first program that I ever got. And then my first time at the Garden, and you're on the card here. And you were taking on S.D. Jones in the Intercontinental title match. Now, this goes back to July of 81, so I don't know if you remember or not. But one of the things that I noticed and I fell in love with, not only your persona and your character, was the amount of heat that was generated with you. You really knew how to get under the fans' nerves and generate that heat. It's very easy to cheer for a wrestler, but for you to generate that kind of heat, was it easy for you to generate that kind of heat back then, or you tell me a secret?
It just came, I guess. You know, it was a personality issue, I suppose. You know, at the time, New York at the time were they were pretty. I think Greg Valentine came before me. Yeah, and but I don't think a lot of, but I think the persona of the heels, they were using the, 6'6", 350-pound guys. Were predominantly the guys to come in and challenge for the strap, the WWF title. So it was kind of, with me and with Greg and myself, we kind of broke the mold, and then went back to the regular a normal sized heel or.
Yeah. Now the reason I brought that up was because that was my first time. I mean, I watched wrestling on TV for I think a couple of weeks until I found out they were coming to the old Boston Garden. So that was my first time at the Boston Garden watching a wrestling event. I was one of 15,000 plus fans there, and the cheering was great. But as soon as you came out of that entrance, I couldn't believe what I heard from 15,000 people. I automatically, for some reason, became like your number one fan in Boston. I'm not kidding you. I was making signs. I was buying wrestling magazines. You really, for some reason, held me as a fan, kept my attention. There were bad guys. Yeah, Greg Valentine, King Kong, Moscar, all those guys. But something about you came in, you could talk, you could, cut that promo and so forth. And that heat back then is something I'll always remember because my ears are still ringing. I'll give away my age, 50 years later. My ears are still ringing. So I want to thank you for that. I'm being a fan now, of course. But one of the other things I wanted to mention was, whose idea was it for you to eat a meatball sub on a TV match on Championship Wrestling? Was that just a sudden idea, or whose idea was that?
It was kind of my idea. I'd run through the 3 programs with snooker. Yeah. Blew off in a cage, or a strap match, or a chain match in all the Bostons or Philadelphias or Madison Square Gardens. Then had 3 shots. Did 3 times around the world basically with Jimmy, right. And then so we broke off into a Buddy Rogers, Jimmy Snuka, Magnificent Muraco, Lou Albano tag team match. Yeah. To carry and Lou at the time was such a character, and
he was.
I'd been to 1 or 2 of those. They used to call them the King's tables, where they have the meals after the Allentown. Yeah. After the Allentown TV taping, where we used to sit there all day and do our individual promos for different towns. Yeah. All over the country, all over North America and abroad as well. Right. and we'd sit there all day, and they had the snack bar in the back, and guys would kind of, that's where you would get our lunch, and they'd make soup or they'd make something for us.
So Vince was feeding you guys way back then, huh?
Well, we're paying for it. It was coming out of the. We were buying the. I'm sure he probably would have, but it wasn't that moved up. Anyway, Lou and myself were becoming like a tag team.
Right.
Well, that was at least that was the point in the majority of the major markets in Boston, Philadelphia, New York, etc. So I wanted to show my how much. I remember Lou at those tables, at those King's tables, and he'd order like 3 lobster tails.
Oh my God!
3 of them, and he'd rip them out of the shell. And he'd sit there with them in his hand, and he'd dip them in the butter. He did, it was like a Viking. It was like a Viking thing. So I wanted to personify myself. That was the image I had of Lou, sitting there at the King's table, just Irish, no good, and yelling at Vince Senior and complaining about payoffs and complaining about that was the image that I had of Lou. So that was so the last minute when they were doing the meatball and and back when they made the hot dogs and the soup and the sandwiches, they had the meatball subs. So I gave somebody a couple bucks. I said, "Bring me back a couple meatballs." And you guys go with the drinks and the whole 9 yards. So and Frankie Williams.
Yeah, God, Frankie.
I was wrestling was good enough to go along with my silliness.
Nice.
Of eating the ring. So I used to always give the preliminary guys. I'd give them my payoff. I think we'd make like $50 or $75 for that whole day. Wow. I mean, even the superstar, even the quote unquote the star,
guy.
the big guy. So I'd the guys that were coming in, that they were doing the jobs for us when they were putting it up. They were looking for that. I split my payoff with those guys.
That's good.
I'm gonna make it down the row, and maybe it'd only buy them a 6-pack or something. But we were taking advantage of. So that was where the meatball came from. Trying to be like Uncle Lou.
Yeah. Now, if memory serves me right, didn't Captain Lou fall on some of the meatball sub after the match?
Yeah, that was the bit. That was the most entertaining part of the whole thing. I'll be remembered by that. But
I think it's awesome.
If you hang on to the end, you see Lou slip and take it. Well, wasn't planned. And Patterson and Vinny and all the announcers just go wild.
The improv was great. The crowd.
Everybody sold it. I just put some icing on the cake. I don't know where. It wasn't planned. Right. It was just something. Just something like Beach Bum. Just came out of nowhere.
I remember. Of course, you always wrestled at the old Boston Gardens, and I used to make beach bum signs, and people would actually spit on me and throw things at me for supporting you. And I was like, oh my God, this is crazy, but I loved it. I fell in love with it. So I paid my dues as a fan supporting you. That's for sure.
There you
go. Your promos. I look back, and I remember watching them. Obviously YouTube has a whole bunch of them and so forth. Some of the stuff you said back then most likely wouldn't make it on air nowadays with the political and being politically correct, and your brawls with Morales and Santana and everybody. I mean, the name calling back then, it was fun, it was entertaining. Do you think that's missing nowadays with the creative side of things over in the new generation, I should say?
Boy, that's really hard to put your finger on, because, I mean, you just go on Facebook and say your hair's blonde. Well, then the other 50% of the people are going to come out and say no, it's not. And they're going to have
It is crazy.
So it's hard to have to react. I doubt. I doubt a lot of that stuff would.
It wouldn't fly.
Yeah, some of the stuff I said about Tony or Rocky Johnson or
Rocky Johnson.
It wasn't.
Now, obviously, the passing of Pat Patterson recently. I find myself a lot of fans reach out to me and so forth, and your name is synonymous with Patterson, Morales, Patera, and you guys because you were the very first Intercontinental champions. How was it like to be associated with that group of talent? At the beginning, because when you think of Intercontinental champion, you think of Pat Patterson, and your name is outside of Morales. It comes automatically next. How does it feel to be associated with that?
Oh, great! It's they're all Hall of Famers, all tremendous performers. I don't necessarily think I'm being pigeonholed in a group, but it was a
right.
It was a. I guess it's an honor. I don't say why not. I have the highest respect for all those guys. Did you have a favorite Northeast arena that you loved going to every time? I know you did the circuit, the Garden, Madison Square Garden, Philadelphia, New Jersey. Do you have a favorite arena that you used to like to go to? Well, naturally, Madison Square was always,
right.
Boston was a great one. Loved going up to Boston. Boston was an easy trip. Normally, we lived in when I first moved, I lived in New Haven there. Then I moved down to Then I moved down to just the other side of Newark, to Edison, New Jersey. So I was a little bit further, but it wasn't a rough trip.
I've shared this story before. I think we talked about it over the summer. You probably forgot, but as a young kid myself, I was about 11 or 12 years old. You had a cage match against Bob Backlund. It was December 5th, 81. You were coming out of the cage. You had lost, obviously. You were bleeding pretty bad. And as a skinny little fan of yours, I ran over to the entranceway and I reached to get a piece of some of your blood on my hands, which I ended up getting. You turned around, you gave me the dirtiest look. And of course, 6 security guards gave me the dirtiest look. And you looked like you were saying, what'd you do that for? But I had your blood on my hands for the next 2 days because that Monday I went back to school and showed everybody that I had Don Muraco's blood on my hands. And everybody looked at me like, man, you are really a wrestling fan, because I didn't shower or bathe for 2 days. And I went back to school that Monday. And I tell that story a lot. The reason being because when I did tell that story, somebody had sent me a photo of you actually exiting the cage right before I did what I did. And talk about a small world, the power of social media. I just thought that was so weird, or I don't know what the word I'm looking for, but to put that story out there and then to have somebody, send me a picture of you actually exiting the cage. It's kind of neat. I'll have to share it with you. I'll send it to you online and so forth. I have it saved on my Facebook and everything, but
sure.
That's the kind of fan I was. And you guys coming into the Boston Garden, you always had to cut through the crowd to get to the locker room. And when you came in, you were just this iconic 6'4", 250-pound wrestler. To me, I was like that it was like, that's professional wrestling to me. That's what it is. So you fast forward to today, and the reason I mention that is the wrestlers nowadays, great talented guys, they're doing what they can, but they don't have the size that you guys had back then. To me, wrestling's supposed to be larger than life. And now if you walk down the street, I would be like, I know who that is. He's a wrestler, or Hulk Hogan or Jimmy Snooker or whatever. But then you get like a Seth Rollins or a Finn Balor or somebody that comes down the street. They look like they just, came around the corner and that was it. Do you feel that's what's missing with the sport nowadays? The size, the big men? There are some big men, but not like they were before. Do you think that's missing, the big guys in the sport?
Well, that's a tough question. That's hard to put my finger on, because like you say, those guys are definitely talented. I mean,
I'm not giving nothing away there. They're in shape. They're very talented.
Yeah. I mean, maybe it could possibly be the mystique. You know what? Because I see, and probably so, because I see guys like Strowman
Oh, he's
some
a
of
big
those
guy.
other guys, they really don't have a lot of guys to work with.
No.
You know, and you get them over as a giant or, you know, giant killer or something else, and then they got to go with a Finn Balor or Seth Rollins or somebody, and they got to, and they do put a, they work their style, but you know they got to bend it, you know, they got to bend things around to fit to the match naturally, you know. Which
I totally get it.
In order to have something entertaining, you know, we're like we got to work together. It's like a broadcast. You know, you could be saying one thing, and I can be coming up with a completely different set of answers to questions that have no relevance. So you know, it's possibly I can't really put my finger. There's a lot of things going. The 10-minute promos, the big long speeches they make at the beginning of the show, and I heard him knocking what's his name, Bray Wyatt's girlfriend, Alexa Bliss. I heard him that she doesn't and not liking that particular angle or what's going down. But you know,
so do you still watch? Do you watch the WWE or AEW? Do you watch any of those shows now?
I'm a closet watcher.
I'm a closet watcher.
I watch it out of my closet. I tape most of the WWE stuff, and I'll fast forward. Through everything, catch some finishes.
That's pretty much nowadays. Yeah, a lot of the fans.
Yeah, I like to see what Bray Wyatt's going to burn up, or you know what the girl's going to do with her eyes, and
I mean it's entertaining.
Wrestling as it is now, you got to kind of got to go with those stories, and you got to digest them.
I'm a generational guy because I mean what I fell in love with back then is definitely not what it is now, and you know you've seen the difference, and it you adapt. It's a new generation now. It seems like every 20 years there's something evolving and so forth. But real quick question. I don't know if we touched this before, but was there any particular reason why you didn't get a world title run over Backlund when you were around? Because you had the following. You were putting people in the seats all over up and down the East Coast. Was there any particular reason for that?
If there was, I don't know of one. Vince Senior, was still running the show. At the time then, so that was pretty much his pattern. For the come in, the TV, the champion, and then I got right in the transition there. We do 2 runs with Backlund, and then another run with Hogan. So I was pretty lucky to.
That steel cage match with Hogan was unbelievable, Madison Square Garden. That was a great match.
So I was able to get 9 shots in with plus all the matches with Pedro, plus another 6 shows with Pedro. So I was lucky to have all those top matches in the Garden.
That was one of the first magazines I ever bought, courtesy of Bill Apter, who he's a friend of mine as well. One of the first magazines I bought had you and Morales on the cover. And I think you only had, I don't even think you guys came to Boston with that brawl. If you did, it might've been 1 match. But you never really made it to Boston with that. It was always like in transition. If Pedro had just won, I do know in 81, you dropped the belt a couple of weeks before the Backlund cage match. And then I think you took off to Georgia after that. You guys did a run down there. But with Pedro and them, we always relegated to like different storylines with different arenas, because finding out now, because there's no internet back then, like Greg Valentine and Bob Backlund were having a storyline in New York where Valentine supposedly won the strap, but you would drop the strap to Pedro. Nobody knew about that. So did you find that often at each arena that you went to, there was like a different storyline happening?
I didn't really keep touch. I wasn't, really wasn't privy to all the storylines. I mean, we'd get to Philadelphia or Boston or whatever what it was, and work to what happened to be coming back the next week. But I don't know if Steamboat and myself, made it around everywhere. I don't think we did a lot in the Garden. I think what we did in the Garden was by the time, and we did big business with me and Ricky Steamboat all around. We did
that's big
TV business. Detroit, a lot of other places.
Yeah, that was later on. Now I do recall when I interviewed Tito Santana, he had beaten you at the Boston Garden for the title, and there was a TV crew on hand, but they ran out of film, so they didn't get to tape the finish. So it was like you get him coming off the top rope with a sunset flip or whatever, and that's it. You don't see nothing until afterwards. So that's why I always ask for stories because, like I said, back then, not much happened at the Boston Garden, but that was one of the first title wins for a champion and challenger back then. So that was I was actually there that night. So that's why I always ask the question, is there like a different storyline? Because now you read about down the road, case in point, you had 60-minute matches with Bob Backlund. And I've only known of two, and that was one at the Garden, the New York Garden and Boston Garden. But you told me that you guys used to do it everywhere.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
One day in Capitol Center in the afternoon and the Spectrum that night.
Yeah. That's a long time. That's a lot. That's
a lot of long 2 hours. Especially trying to change up the whole match because a lot of people were.
Now, your role as an Intercontinental Champion was to really make everybody look good. Based on crowd reaction, do you feel you've done that? I think you have, but a lot of wrestlers sometimes don't think that. But do you think you put everybody over that you could? I know Rocky Johnson probably appreciated that on TV one day.
Yeah, I think like anytime I got my hand raised, I was on my back and, just had this knot kicked out of me. Got, somehow managed to get my hand raised. It was never.
Who is your favorite wrestler to be in the ring with? I mean, you probably have a bunch, but which one stands out when you get that question asked?
Oh, I got to go to Jimmy because he's the one that did it, and I kind of hate that question because there's so many guys.
No, I get it. I understand.
I'm just saying that like all wrestlers, not myself exclusively, but there's. You come Dusty in Florida, and this guy in Georgia, Wrestling 2 in Georgia, and Von Erichs in Texas, or the Crusher in Minneapolis. I mean, you run across all these guys, in the course of your career, where you have, you feel you come out of the ring, and you feel like you have, a hell of a match with the guy, and then. So it's hard to, pigeonhole it to one, but like I'd say probably Jimmy. Jimmy was always easy, and of course everybody. I think most everybody I was in the ring with was all Hulk was easy. Loved to wrestle Hulk. I knew the dollar signs were following that match.
Yep. That's awesome. I mean, you've had quite a storied career. There's no doubt about it. I think you had a storied career all the way through me going to high school, and that was like right after Hogan. So, being a WWE Hall of Famer, being a WWE superstar, and now you're probably considered a WWE legend. That speaks volumes for your career. Do a lot of people reach out to you? And ask you the same old question, whatever it is? What's the number one question people seem to ask you a lot?
Like that favorite match, favorite opponent, favorite building, favorite venue.
Basically everything I've asked you, right?
No, it's pretty typical. It's not a.
So where'd the Asiatic spike come from? The taped thumb. You don't really see that anymore. Even back then, that was pretty innovative of yourself. Where did that come from? Where did you develop that?
Eddie Graham and Buddy Rogers.
Really? They said tape up your thumb and you went with it?
Couldn't find two finer minds.
Wow.
Than those two to create that. There's the ones out there, the ones that had me shave my head.
Yeah.
They're the ones that put me under the mask in Florida.
I remember that because you had just left WWF in 81, and I finally got cable TV in my hometown, and all of a sudden I get Championship Wrestling from Florida or Georgia, and you come along with a mask on. I think you were managed by Roddy Piper at the time, And I'm sitting there going, that's Don Muraco. What's he doing under a mask? But I think he would call Mr. X, right? Something like that. With the mask on.
Might have been a couple. That was way before I was under the mask. Way before that, I was Magnificent Air.
Oh, okay.
That's how the Magnificent. That's how Magnificent came around. That was a Buddy Rogers, EG handle too from those two. So
wow.
Eddie and Buddy gave me that, the Magnificent one, and the spike and that whole thing, that whole angle out of those two guys.
See, it's things like that. You don't see that nowadays. Something small like that can speak, that tells a story in the ring, which, a lot of people can't do or don't do anymore, is tell that big story. A lot of the stories are outside the ring now, and then they get in the ring and it's 5 minutes or whatever, and then that's it. But you told a great story in the ring, whether you were heel or when you turned babyface and so forth. So just switching gears again, how is everything with yourself with the coronavirus and all that stuff? You guys being safe? What's Hawaii like during the lockdowns and all that stuff?
Hawaii's been pretty good. We've been over the last month or so, I think, we've averaging less than 100 cases a day.
Oh, that's great! Wow.
And the number of deaths are usually under 5. I don't want to generalize, but and normally a lot of those deaths are related to people have had lung problems or
it's something
COPD
else
or lung cancer or something, and they're in their 70s or 80s.
Yeah, I've had friends, relatives pass away, and I knew they had cancer or lung disease, but they'll mark it COVID. I'm like, they didn't die of COVID. But I guess that's the way it is right now, until it gets all straightened out. But but I'm glad to hear things are okay in Hawaii. When I interviewed Tito Santana, he had just gotten over COVID back in April. He had it in March when it first came around, and then I interviewed him in April, and he had it, and nobody knew that until he told me. So. Yeah, so I mean, he survived and so forth. Pat Patterson, I know we touched upon it before. Did you ever wrestle Pat in the ring?
Oh, many times. I was in San Francisco.
Yeah. Okay, so it wasn't WWF related though, right? I know he did the TV back then.
A few times in WWF. I wrestled him in
Cow Palace, San Francisco.
Oh yeah, many times. But I wrestled him in it's either Rochester or Syracuse once.
Okay.
And doing something. I was a heel naturally. I ended up on the floor, and he stepped out to get me, and he stepped in the on the announcer's table.
Oh.
And went right through it, and that Formica had cut a hole about that wide and about that deep.
Oh wow!
In his leg. Yeah, and I saw it open up. And he wanted to keep wrestling. I said, forget about it, brother. Go back to it's stuff. And then he couldn't see it because I was right eye level when he stepped in the table.
Right.
But I wrestled him many times in the Cow Palace.
Yeah.
In fact, one time he that was San Francisco was his town.
Right.
He took it in.
He owned it. Yep.
He was gay and he took it over and.
Have you seen the documentary on WWE Network yet?
I saw the memorial they did for him. I don't know if
he's got a documentary out. And I didn't know that in his early years after he left San Francisco and came to WWF, he lived in Boston for quite some time. I had no idea. I didn't know.
I think his sister's up there.
What's that?
I think he had a couple of sisters or so up.
Yeah, he was living with. He was living with a friend and so forth, but it was very prominent. When I saw where he lived in Boston, it looked like he was either on Commonwealth Avenue or Mass Ave, which is right downtown Boston. So when I saw that, I'm like, oh, I didn't know. I mean, there's a connection with him in Boston, but obviously San Francisco put him on the map, and then of course WWF and all that stuff. So
the only thing I found curious was when they were living in the house all together, Duggan and Piper and
the Legends house. Yep. Yeah,
the Legends house. When he came at the end, when he kind of broke down and he said, "I've been trying all my life to." I mean, he lived as good his life as anybody, and there was never, as far as especially going back to the 60s and 70s,
Yeah.
As far as being gay or LGBTQ, whatever you want to call it, nowadays he was more accepted than he had. I remember I went to with Dennis Bach, Uncle Nick's brother, when I ripped my shoulder out. So we were driving around Northern California. We went up to his house. His first house was a beautiful in the track homes. It was a beautiful with a solarium in the middle of the house, and one of those Rod Stewart kind of knick-knack kind of places. And then later on, I know he moved down to Redwood City, where he had a leveled house, leveled planes with the swimming pool down in the bottom, and he just was a beautiful home there. So as far as not being accepted or not having much of a life as a gay person, I don't know about that. I mean, he lived he lived as well as anybody did.
Yeah, they said it was the worst kept secret in the industry that he was gay, but that didn't define him. Yeah, that didn't define him. I mean, he was a wonderful performer. I've seen him, I want to say the night that you wrestled snooker in the cage at Boston Garden. I don't know if you remember back then, but he used to put the cage in the corner in the ringside area. So he had a match with Ivan Koloff, and he's chasing Ivan around the ring. And all of a sudden, Ivan trips over the cage because he didn't see it. And then, similar to your incident with him at the Cow Palace, Ivan gets up and he's all busted open. So it's like, what happened to this match? He's running around the ring. He hits the floor and he hits the steel cage that's set up on the floor. And he gets up and he's a bloody mess, and it turns into a bloodbath. So, and I could see that Patterson was like, keep going. We're going to keep going. So I can see that. But he was a hell of an entertainer. He was a hell of a commentator. The guy barely spoke English when he first came to the States. And you could tell promos, but boy, did he sell it. He knew how to sell it. And, he's one of the guys.
He was a student. He was a student of, he was a student of the business. We would talk. His partner, Louis, was a hell of a good friend of mine.
Yeah.
And Louis were closer than Pat and myself were, I think.
Wow.
Because he was Louis was a good guy. I traveled with him all the time. So I got to know him from way back in San Francisco.
Sure.
Then Florida, then the New York WWE.
Wow.
So I knew Pat for quite a while.
Awesome. Now, has the WWE reached out to anybody on your end for something in the future, any future projects or anything like that? Because I know a lot of people ask me, how come you're not included in a lot of stuff, like intercontinental stuff, things of that nature. Do they ever reach out to you for that?
They used to. I don't travel. It's my shortcoming. My legs and stuff don't allow me to.
Oh, okay.
And I live in Hawaii, so to start with, I got a 5-hour trip just to.
Why would you want to leave Hawaii anyways?
Well, yeah.
I got to get to Hawaii.
I'd like to get over there. I'd like to see everybody. I like to.
Right.
I enjoyed. I did about 5 or 6 years ago. I did the signing in Jersey and getting to see everybody.
One of my fans.
Everybody goes back right away. Everybody lives there.
Yeah.
Everybody sees everybody all the time. So they do their hour and boom, they're gone. So it's not even worth that much.
It's funny because last time I had you on, I meant to say hi to somebody for you. It was the Metal Maniac, Jeff Miller, told me to say hi. That's all. He just wanted to say hi. I don't know what that's all about, but he just said to say hi. So
you could have done the whole thing without doing that. My wife just jacked the price up.
Oh Jesus! Here we go.
She just tripled the.
Oh my God! So his name. Okay, so his name's good. Right?
Yeah. Cost, yeah. And I think there's a blacklist your name went on.
Woo! Not me, man. No way.
What not a day?
Oh God! I take it back now. I don't know who he is. But well, I want to thank you for taking the time out to come on the show. I just want to thank you. It's great checking in with you and so forth. Do you do any events in Hawaii? Like conventions that come around?
Oos Wrestling. They have an Oos.
Oh, they do.
Oos Wrestling. Siva Afi.
Okay.
His son.
Yeah.
And the Alpha and Sika from they got their fingers in it. Their talent, and they got some talent going. So we have Us Wrestling, UCE,
nice,
in Hawaii, and that's Bonnie Maxon, Aleki's
okay,
Siva's son's wife is pregnant and due any minute now.
Oh, geez.
So that, that's we got that. We got a little bit of wrestling.
Now you also,
like every place else, we shut down with COVID. So
right now you also do a podcast with Avi, right?
Every Thursday.
You want to tell my
5 p.m.
Tell my fans about
5 p.m. Eastern Time, making waves.
Making waves.
WWAB. It's going to. It's on this one, StreamYard.
Okay.
And we're going to 3 or 4 other outlets as well. So we're picking up slowly. And we're doing pretty good.
That's great.
Myself, Del Wilkes.
Okay. Oh yeah. Wow. The Patriot, right? Yeah.
And every time Bill McDermott, not McDermott, DeMott.
Oh, Bill DeMott, the old timer. Okay. Yep.
Mike Drosy and Ray Lloyd and Paul Roman. Okay. Yeah. Those are all the wrestlers. And I hear George Wendt. Is it George Wendt from Cheers?
Yep.
Is that Norm? Yeah. Norm.
Yep. Norm. Yeah.
And I think we've got a rock and roll or a musical name, which I don't know any about.
No, that's all right. But they can find that podcast online, right? On Facebook.
Yeah, you can find it all over.
Excellent. Well, again, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to check in with What a Day. It's been a pleasure checking in with you, Don. And like I said, thank you again.
All right. What a day, Joe Lowry.
All right. Hey, everybody. That's going to do it from here. I'm Joe Lowry. What a day.
Aloha.
What a day. With Joe Lowry.